Need I say more? Hey everybody, it's Xeno here, and welcome back to another video about The Legend of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom. Today we're going to be talking about gameplay, as that is a pretty important thing in most video games nowadays. So if you missed the last video, we went in depth on all of the story beats in Tears of the Kingdom, what we liked, what we didn't like. I encourage you to go check it out, and let us know what you liked, what you didn't like. But today we're talking about gameplay. So how does this game play? Is it a good evolution of Breath of the Wild? Yeah. Yeah. Tears of the Kingdom is another revolution, I'd say, in terms of game design, and it's a really wacky one. Let's talk about first impressions. We start with a sequence in the caves, which I was not expecting to see. I thought that would be all cutscene, which I thought was nice, that we get a little bit in the beginning where Link is still at the top of his game from Breath of the Wild, and then we get explained why he's going back down to 3 hearts, and we get to actually play as him for a little sequence there, talk to Zelda, get a little bit of information. I liked that. But then we go into the Sky Islands, which is our new Great Plateau. And I don't know about you guys, but I like the Great Sky Islands more than the Great Plateau. This was one of my favorite parts of the game, actually, and definitely the best part of the game that takes place in the sky, which we'll get to that. Yeah, I really like the Great Sky Islands. I think it's a great tutorial. You go around, you get your abilities one by one, just like you did in Breath of the Wild. You're also aided by a King of Hyrule, just like you are in Breath of the Wild, being Rauru, and he's pretty cool. I like Rauru. Some might say I love him. He's pretty cool. Our new abilities, being Ultra Hand, Recall, Ascend, and Fuse, are all spectacular. They are evolutions of abilities from Breath of the Wild and some new stuff. So let's go over them. Ultra Hand is Magnesis, except better in every way. You can lift objects that aren't metal, and you can also now put those objects together with other objects by sticking them together. And the name is a reference to the Ultra Hand toy that Nintendo made too, which is pretty cool. Recall is interesting because it is the opposite of stasis, really. You're not building up energy and then letting it go. You are rewinding what has already happened, which combined with Ultra Hand can allow you to subvert so many puzzles, and I love that. Just the freedom of this game by Ultra Handing something up and then putting it down, going up a cliff, recalling it up, and then you take it where you weren't supposed to, or at least that wasn't the intended way to solve it, but you can solve it that way, which is awesome. This game really expands upon the whole idea of do it your way in many, many ways. Ascend is one I wasn't so sure about at first, if it would break the game or how useful it would really be at all, but I think it ended up having a really great balance of not being too broken, but also being extremely helpful, and it might be the ability that I have the most affinity for just because of how many tight spots it has gotten me out of. Also, with how this game blends so many caves into the landscape of Hyrule, which, yes, that is amazing. We'll talk about how expanded Hyrule is here in a bit, but Ascend just works so well for quick escapes out of anywhere, or just climbing structures you wouldn't be able to climb otherwise, or just avoiding the rain if you want to climb up a cliff and there's a cave nearby. You just go inside, you go right through it. I think it's also really interesting that I heard Ascend was actually a developer debug tool that they used when building the game that they just thought was so cool and useful that they decided, we're going to build puzzles around this and we're going to make it one of your main abilities. I just love that. And finally, that brings us to Fuse, which is the most different of our new abilities here, because it doesn't really do anything itself. It's more a mechanic in the game that drives the whole weapon system. This reimagines the weapon hierarchy of Breath of the Wild, where you could just find really, really good weapons in Hyrule Castle and then just use those for a bit. They break, Blood Moon, go back, get them from Hyrule Castle again. You're always using Royal Claymores or Royal Guard stuff. In this game, everything is decayed. The gloom and the upheaval have caused mass hysteria, but also all the weapons, they're just terrible now. So, you gotta fuse them with stuff to make them good again. At first, I was doing this all wrong. I was fusing 2 weapons together, right? That's what I did at the beginning of the game. I thought, oh, okay, I'll take this weapon, fuse it with that weapon. Bam, I have a super long stick now. That's really useful. Am I right? Well, yeah, it actually is useful, but as far as the amount of damage it does, it's not that great. What you later come to find out is that this mechanic was put into the game to kind of make your weapon progression related to the enemies that you kill and how good you're doing with the enemies you take out. The more terribly hard enemies that you challenge and succeed in defeating, the better weapons you're gonna get. There's actually a reason to fight that Lionel besides getting the Savage Lionel bow. Now you're gonna get a bunch of Lionel horns and hoofs, and you can fuse those to your weapons, which will then give you some of the most powerful stuff in the game, even if it's just a stick, because all weapons are pretty close to each other in their small values, but then you add on something huge like that, and that's how you get a good weapon. I think it's a very intuitive system. I like it better than the weapon durability in Breath of the Wild. It makes things more interesting. It also makes Link look awfully goofy sometimes, which is cool at times and not at others. But those 4 abilities are the building blocks of this game, just as the runes were in Breath of the Wild, except I feel even to a larger degree, these abilities define this game. It's also interesting that we don't have access to any of the runes from Breath of the Wild. It makes some enemies like totally different to fight, whereas in Breath of the Wild, I'd throw a bomb at a Talus and break off its arms with that. Now I can't do that, so I have to think, what tool in my toolbox is going to be most effective in taking this guy down? And then I realize, oh, if he's throwing his arm at me, I can throw it back at him because I can recall the movement of anything around me. I just really like that dynamic. The abilities that I came to rely on in the last game, now I have to find new ways to do stuff like that. Cryonis, you don't have that anymore. Any river now becomes a huge problem for you until you realize, oh, I can build a speedboat now. And speaking of building, let's get a little bit into that because, oh my goodness. This is the revolutionary new mechanic that Tears of the Kingdom has brought to us to redefine what an open world game can be. That's what all the journalists and all those people that are like, oh, this is the future are saying, you know? And I mean, maybe that's a little much to go like, oh my gosh, the future of gaming is here. But I do think it's super duper impressive, and it's something to look at. Like, why do we keep chasing graphics that are better and better and better when you just have like a little bit more of the detail you can see on the character's face? We're already at such a high fidelity point. Maybe we should start looking at stuff more from a perspective of, oh, what if we made systems so intricate that whatever you did in the game would mirror what would happen in like real life? Like, if I build a raft, it's gonna work. Like, I don't know, like the physics system is very advanced is what I'm trying to say, and I think maybe we should start looking at improving games in ways other than graphical fidelity, going in directions like Zelda did here. They honed in on this idea they thought was very interesting. How can we interact with the world, use that for problem solving? So I've had nothing but praise for the gameplay of Tears of the Kingdom so far, so I have to go and knock it down one peg. I have to say one thing that I'm a little upset about, which is just that the sequel feels more like it's trying to replace Breath of the Wild than add on to it. I guess that's the best way I can put it. This game is, it's such a step over like everything in Breath of the Wild. It feels like there's little reason to go back to that game now. This is the same world, but better. This is similar abilities, but more interesting. This is a place with more places to go. You can go to the sky, you can go to the underground, you can traverse this place a lot easier now. You have more interesting storylines to go along with it. Everything is better. It feels like it's replacing Breath of the Wild. That's just the best way I can say it. The way I see it, there's only like 3 things that you would go back to play that game for now. I mean, you could say story too, but the game doesn't have much of a story. And it would be the unique runes, the Guardians, which that is something that they kept unique to Breath of the Wild, which I kind of like. You give it that identity with the Sheikah stuff, and give the Zonai identity to Tears of the Kingdom, and the Divine Beasts. But I mean, a lot of people didn't even like those. It makes Breath of the Wild obsolete in a lot of ways, and I think they kind of knew that too, because they made this game very beginner-friendly. You don't need to have played Breath of the Wild to have played Tears of the Kingdom. You might have an even better experience, actually. It's going to be a different experience, right? Because to a new player, this is all new. This Hyrule that we see, I don't know the layout of this place. I don't know what's around that mountain. Whereas a returning player, they're probably going to know that. And they're going to go, oh, I want to go see what the Korok Forest looks like now in this game. What's changed? Because you notice very quickly everything has changed at least a little bit. The new player is just like flabbergasted by everything. It's really interesting because I think to myself, would I rather play this game with that mindset of a beginner? Everything is just first time interesting, whoa, or do I enjoy coming back to this world and seeing the new things? Because also this game presents Hyrule in a different aspect, where you start in the sky. You can already see all of it. There's a lot less mystery and intrigue in discovering these places just because of the amount of ways you have to traverse this land and the access that you have. You have a lot more options for getting around. The game's very welcoming to new players, and that's a good and bad thing in my opinion. You got your pros and you got your cons. We've talked about a lot so far, but we've kind of been ignoring what the Zelda team would say is the main character of Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom, being the Kingdom of Hyrule itself. So in Breath of the Wild, we had this huge new open world version of Hyrule. In Tears of the Kingdom, we have 3 layers to this huge open world version of Hyrule: sky, surface, and depths. So let's start at the top and go to the bottom. I teased my thoughts on the sky earlier, and I do have some. I have some thoughts on the sky in Tears of the Kingdom. I think it's immensely disappointing. When you plaster the box art on the front of your game and all of the marketing and images that you put out in the trailers and everything with the sky and these beautiful sky islands and this new landscape, and that's going to be the main selling point of this new game, you'd expect this guy to be a large majority of the game's new content. But something fishy is going on here, because this is the surface, this is the depths, and this is the sky. Its presence is puny, and the largest sky island you get to explore is at the very beginning of the game, which sets a really good first impression, but also sets an impression that I'm gonna get to explore other giant sky islands like this, about this in size. But no, this is the largest one in the game, and they never really follow up on anything that can top it. There's 2 dungeons in the sky with sequences leading up to them, but let's be honest, they're fine, they're okay, they're going in the right direction, but I wanted a lot more versions of what the Great Sky Islands were. The surface, on the other hand, impressed me, and I wasn't expecting it to impress me since I've seen this version of Hyrule before, but they did a lot more than I expected them to do to make Hyrule feel fresh again, and every location you go to, every thought that comes to your head, Korok Forest, Tabantha region, Forgotten Temple, let's go over to a stable, anywhere that you can think of from Breath of the Wild, go there, you're gonna find something different. Something has changed. It's not the same type of exploration as Breath of the Wild, the pure awe of a new landscape you get to explore and everything like that, what I was hitting home this entire time leading up to this game, one of my biggest fears, but it's a whole new kind of thing. It's more, wow, I can't wait to figure out what crazy stuff happened over there. Everywhere you turn, something is new. Intricacies have been added to every inch and corner of this land. There's caves everywhere, there's new enemies, there's new items to discover. I think they actually pulled it off here. They actually justified reusing this Hyrule. And finally, the third and lowest layer of Hyrule, the depths. I could not be happier with how well this aspect of the game was implemented and how well they hit it pre-release. For me, there's definitely an element of vindication since I've been putting all my eggs in the underground basket for a while now. Since that very first trailer, I was like, this is the direction they're going in. That just makes sense. Then they did the 2021 trailer and I second-guessed myself because, oh, they're actually going for the sky. And then I thought, no, maybe they're going for the underground. Then my hopes were crushed again because nothing was said for such a long time. And then it just kind of popped up and blindsided me at release, and I could not be happier about that. The depths are unlike anything in any Zelda game. I guess like the nearest comparison I can make is kind of a weird one, but it kind of feels like Wind Waker in a way, where you're exploring the Great Sea. It's a similar feeling. The way that you go around, you find the light routes and you fill in the map slowly, and it's interesting. I really, really like the depths. It brings this element of a new terrain to explore in Tears of the Kingdom too, something I was worried about with the surface of Hyrule. We know where all that is. The depths, we kinda can glean some of the locations by looking at the map above us, but we don't know what the heck we're gonna find in this very dark, scary, and gloomy place. The size of the depths is also impressive and beyond anything I ever thought they would implement in this game. It's the same as the base of Hyrule. Like, there's definitely a little bit less land because they have, like, different caverns that are, like, closed off and everything, but, like, this covers the entirety of the underground of the main map, which is bonkers. On top of that, it goes about it in such an interesting way where it's pure darkness down there. It's what you would expect. There's tiny little caverns from the gloom all around Hyrule, but there's not really any light source down there. We thought maybe they'd use the luminous stones to kinda illuminate the landscape down there, make it kinda more like there's still lighting down there, but no, it is deep darkness until you find the light roots, which make it a little bit less deep darkness, but it's still really cool, and it just adds to the unknown of this entire landscape. I freaking love it. The story implications are also very interesting. Unfortunately, I don't think they really ever deliver on them. They don't explore more about why the depths are here, why there's gloom all over it, what's Ganondorf's connection to it beyond I was just imprisoned down here for thousands and thousands of years, yeah. But there was potential to have cool story implications. The Zonai vehicles also rule down here. It's just very interesting going straight into the darkness, just flying off into the darkness on a Zonai glider and hitting a mountain where you just have total frustration because you just spent 10 minutes making that glider, but now it's like useless. Or you bypass the mountain and you're like, oh, this was actually a good use of my time. I'm flying around in the darkness. This is pretty cool. If you couldn't tell, I'm overall pretty pleased with how Hyrule was implemented in this game. I don't think I went to see this version of Hyrule a third time, but I am very happy I got to see it a second time because they expanded upon it and made it so much more interesting in every way they could. But before we move on to something else, I do want to go into one little theory that I have about why the sky is the main thing they're marketing in this game. The depths are what Tears of the Kingdom should have marketed as its brand new main feature. That should have been the big thing that you see on the box art, Link in the underground darkness and all that. But I think the reason they went for the sky is because they thought that would be more marketable. That's something that they thought would sell better. And they also wanted to keep the secret of the depths, which I do respect that. But it's kind of, in a small sense, false advertising, I think. The sky's there. You can explore what is there is pretty cool, but the meat and potatoes of the new content is mostly the depths. There's a whole lot more going on down there than the majority of the sky. More effort seems to have been put into the depths because there was a whole lot more to do down there. I don't know, I just think it makes more sense that the identity of this game would be tied to that more than to the Sky Islands. But maybe I'm just biased. I don't know. Let's shift into dungeons, because that's one of the big returning features we have in Tears of the Kingdom that fans have been clamoring for. We have unique dungeons again. We have the Fire Temple, the Lightning Temple, the Wind Temple, and the Water Temple, and then also the Spirit Temple. So for everything I'm about to say, I'm mainly talking about the regional phenomenon temples, the ones related to the different races of Hyrule. And here's my opinion. They're not that great. I could not be more happy that we yet again have unique layouts to all of these dungeons. They're not all the Sheikah tech aesthetic like the Divine Beasts were, because the Divine Beasts were cool on the outside. You see these giant robots running around the land. That's a really cool concept, but then you get inside and they're all very similar. These locations are unique. They have that. What they don't have is the gameplay difference that us classic Zelda fans were kind of looking for. These are still basically divine beasts. You're given a set amount of objectives, you go around this area and complete puzzles to unlock those objectives and get closer to the boss, which is exactly what you did in the Divine Beasts. You're just doing it in a different setting, and probably in some cases a bigger setting. You have more substance in the lead-up sections to the dungeons, which take place in the overworld, but I don't really count those as part of the dungeons. That's overworld stuff. It's really the main aspect of this game that has proven to me that I don't think the open world Zelda formula can fully capture what the linear Zelda games of the past were doing. I don't think we're ever going to get to a point where you can satisfy all of your old fans with this new way forward. It's too different. They're both great, but there's a lot of things here that I just don't think in the end are going to transfer well. Just because if you want to keep the freedom of the overworld of Breath of the Wild, this is really the only way you can do objectives like dungeons. Like, say, for example, the Lightning Temple is a linear dungeon. We're going from the bottom of the pyramid to the top. We have the Ascend ability. We could just go straight through every floor, and there's the boss. Unless you take away abilities, kind of like they do with climbing and shrines, that's where you're at. Speaking of shrines, let's put a quick pin in that, because I'm going to come right back to it, but I want to talk about the bosses first, because they are an improvement too. We actually have unique bosses, but I'm still going to complain about them because I think there's a severe lack of variety still. Maybe I've been spoiled by Elden Ring. I mean, I have. I most certainly have. But I don't know. I look at this game and I see the 4 unique bosses that we have for each temple, and I see a little bit more variety in our mini bosses in the overworld. And I do see that we have mini bosses in this game before all of the temples too, which is good, but that's it. That's all we get. And even if you go like down to the depths, you're expecting like, oh, I'm gonna find some unique monster just kind of flying around down there, or something big and massive, and it's gonna be cool, which did happen to me. I was going around in the depths and I saw off in the distance there's a giant dragon flying around out there. And it's not a Gleeok. It's like something new. Until I get a little bit closer and I realize that it's the Wind Temple boss. They're just reusing him because they reuse those bosses in the depths instead of like just putting like some unique stuff down there. Where's the Dodongo? I wanted to see a Dodongo. But yeah, I feel like that's kind of nitpicking. It's also comparing this game to another game where the boss variety is one of the main draws, and this game that's not the main draw, so, you know, that's where we're at. But anyway, shrines. Shrines are back, and I'm happy. I think they have a place in open-world Zelda games like this. But I do think we should have reduced them back a little bit. I don't think we should have gone with... I don't even know how many are in Tears of the Kingdom. I'm guessing 120, like we got in Breath of the Wild. But I'm not entirely sure. I know there's a lot. I like seeing shrines. I like doing them every once in a while, but I'm gonna be honest with you guys. In this game, a lot of times when I came up to a shrine, I'd get the fast travel point, and then I'd leave it. And I'd just kind of do it later. I'd go and do, like, shrine runs. I'd do, like, 5 or 6 shrines in a row. And kind of, it would be like a mini dungeon thing for me. Which I like doing that. And I like that you have the freedom to do that, or you can do them as you find them. And that's cool. I just think there's too many. I'd say 50, 60 shrines. That would be a nice split. You'd see them all over the place, but not too often. And then you'd also have time to work more on making the main dungeons better, or doing more main dungeons, or just putting that effort elsewhere. Because after you do so many shrines, you kind of get a little sick of the repetition there. We're coming down to the wire here. We've had a pretty good discussion about many of the facets of gameplay in this game. But one thing we've been missing is the enemies, which I have to say, I'm pretty pleased with the amount of new variety we have here. Horriblins, Like-Likes, Aracudas, Boss Bokoblins, Frogs, Trees, Gibdos, and Gloomhands. This is a good selection, and I was very happy when I saw every one of these, and very terrified in some instances as well. Like when I first saw Horriblin, I didn't know they were gonna have a new, like totally new base enemy in this game where you kind of find like Moblins, Bokoblins, now you find Horriblins too. That's something that's never been in a Zelda game before. It's brand new. I like that. And they're fun. They're cool. They make funny noises. I like them. Boss bokoblins, I can't believe we didn't have those in Breath of the Wild, because they're pretty much bokoblins, except, you know, bigger, which is just fun, you know? It adds variety. It's simple, but it adds variety. Gibdos, I'm so happy to see them back. I wish that we got a little bit more of the undead enemies, though. I wish we had, like, redeads in there, too, just because I'm greedy. And I wish that they were a little more menacing, because they're just too slow. And the elemental thing does make it so that, like, if you have an elemental weapon to use, like, they're extremely easy to take out. And Gloomhands scared me to death. I have a story about Gloomhands. I feel like everyone is going to have a story about Gloomhands. I was just walking across the Tabantha area, and because I was going to over by the Gerudo Highlands, I was going to take a little detour. It was early in the game, taking a detour through the Gerudo Highlands, go check up on Master Koga. I wanted to go to the pit, see if he was at the bottom of it. He wasn't, which was unfortunate. I did find him later, though. But on my way there, I noticed that the sky was turning red, and some ominous music started playing, and I thought, it's daytime. It's a weird time for a blood moon to happen. Then I turned around. I don't think I've ever been that scared in a Zelda game. Maybe Wall Masters. They creep me out. I guess it's just appendages. I got a problem with those. And then when you actually build up the courage to fire like 15 bomb arrows at them and actually kill them, you find out that, oh, every pair of Gloomhands comes with a little present inside. A Phantom Ganon. And that scares you to death too, because that's probably going to be the first time that you fight Ganon in this game. And that's kind of, it's a menacing thing. It's a very menacing thing. And I love it. They're the new guardians of this game, although they don't show up as often, but they're more potent, I'd say. Like they get ya. Gotta give a shout out to legs too. They're less annoying than ever in this game, which is nice, but they're still fun to fight. They might be my favorite iteration of legs just because of that, and they all come with a little treasure chest inside too, which is, you know, it's a bit of a plus. If there was one enemy addition here that I would say I didn't like, it would be the constructs. Yeah, I'm sorry guys, but I'm not a huge fan of the constructs designs. First of all, I feel they're all way too samey. We don't get enough cool new ones, which I guess was kind of a problem with the Guardians too, but I think I liked the base Guardian design better, so I wasn't that butthurt over all of them looking so similar. I'm not a huge fan of the base construct design. Even like the good constructs, like the stewards, I kind of got sick of seeing them so much. I wish we had like more variety in the type of constructs they made. Like, just, I don't know. They're a whole lot less menacing than Guardians 2, even if they're like the mini Guardians from Breath of the Wild, which we're comparing them to. I still think those are a lot more menacing. I don't know. I'm just not big on constructs. I'm sorry. One point I want to drive home is how this game made me never want to fast travel. The amount of options I had, the variety of ways that I could traverse Hyrule was so freeing and so interesting that I never wanted to fast travel anywhere. If I was in the depths, I didn't want to just take the easy way out and go back up. I wanted to find a hole and get a hot air balloon or a flying machine or something like that and make my own way out. Because that was just cool. That's just cool, and you can do that. And it's very satisfying. Even exploring above ground, making cars, making flying machines, experimenting with what you can build with Zonai tech. It's so much fun. It's a playground. This Hyrule is not just an amazing adventure game where you can go around and see this great, well, maybe not great, but pretty interesting story, and then have a lot of fun battling enemies, having a little adventure, but you also can just goof off. You can make all of this junk, and it's beautiful. It's wonderful, and I'm so happy that this was the direction the Zelda team decided to take with this game, because while it probably would not be the direction I'd take, I think it worked out splendidly. I think it's safe to say that the Zonai have revolutionized game design to an extent. They've really made people think about the importance of physics and how you interact with open worlds, because this game is just so much fun because of that. And I guess if there was one last point I wanted to make, how the heck does this game run on Nintendo Switch? I don't understand it. I know it doesn't run well. a lot of times, especially if you are messing around with Zonai tech. But it still runs, and I don't even know how it does that. Even around in the sky, it's just so impressive. The draw distance, everything, it's better than Breath of the Wild. It's more impressive because you can see like the entire world at once. It's bonkers to me. I don't get it. Even transitions between the depths and regular Hyrule, there's a little bit of like lag there sometimes, but it's not much. You combine that with this game's very artistic and pleasing art style, and then you just have like this perfect storm where it's not a graphical powerhouse per se, but it's a beautiful game. It's just beautiful to watch. It's like a painting, living painting. That's how I describe it. If you couldn't tell, I very much enjoyed the gameplay of The Legend of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom, and I have a feeling you guys probably did too. But let me know what you think in the comments below, for sure. I'd love to hear it. Again, if you guys want to hear my thoughts on the story, I have a separate video out right now about that. You can go check that out. And we'll probably have a few other things going up sometime soon. So stick around, subscribe to the channel, and enjoy your day. Have a good one, everybody. Bye-bye.